So good morning, everybody, and welcome to this, our Cabinet meeting on Tuesday, the 11th of November, 2025. Thanks to everybody for doing this an hour later than usual. Clearly, we've just all been across at the Remembrance event. Before we start, I just need to read the normal, there are a lot of people here, so I need to read the normal housekeeping statement. So thank you for attending this meeting of Cabinet. Whilst the meeting is open to the public, it is being recorded and broadcast live on the County Council's website and will be available for repeat viewing. It may also be recorded and filmed by the press and public. Filming or recording is only permitted in this room whilst the meeting is taking place, so must stop when the meeting is either adjourned or closed. Filming is not permitted elsewhere in the building at any time. If the filming of the meeting is paused for any reason while the meeting is still taking place, then an audio recording will be commenced in order to assist with minute taking and to resolve any lack of clarity. Audio recordings will not be broadcast. We are not expecting a fire drill, but in the event that there is a fire alarm, please vacate via the main reception or one of the emergency exits across the hall. So item one is apologies for absence. We've got apologies from Councillor Lulu Bowerman, who's attending a remembrance event in Emsworth. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest to declare? No. Obviously, as we go through, if anything comes to mind, then do please mention it. We've got the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 30th of October. That was our meeting where we were discussing devolution. Has everyone seen them and is everyone happy with them?
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, thank you very much. We have no deputation requests received. Nor any, but we do have requests to speak from non-executive members, and so I'll be asking those members if they wish to speak to come along and have their say at the beginning of the appropriate items. And I think everybody wants to speak on the outdoor centres. That's correct. Yeah, okie dokie. So just a few quick chairman's announcements from me. First of all, thank you to everybody who came across to the staff remembrance service that we've just held at the castle about half an hour ago. Thanks to everybody for organising it and for everybody who turned out for it. There were an enormous number of people there. It was good to see. Secondly, our budget consultation is open. So the County Council's budget consultation was launched last week. It's something that we do pretty much on an annual basis to talk about how we should be managing our budget going forward, and we'll be talking much more about this as we go through the meeting today. So if you receive services from us, if you work with us, or if indeed you are a member of staff or a member, do please respond to the consultation, which is online, and the deadline to do so is the 7th of December. We obviously won't be making any decisions yet, and there is a lot that is still unknown, as you will hear as we go through the arrangements, and I think we're all on tenterhooks for the 26th of November, which is the date of the national budget, where we'll begin to get some kind of sense of the different changes that might well happen to impact us going forward. SEND provision is one of the main challenges that we face in terms of its growth, and I'm pleased to say that we are continuing to invest in our own provision to support children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. Our aim is to reduce reliance on expensive placements in the independent sector and to ensure that we're able to provide good services close to home for those people and those young people who require it. So since 2018, we have created more than 750 new specialist school places, and we are continuing to do this. And Steve, at his decision day, has approved a further £2.1 million refurbishment of the Hive building at Shepherdstown Special School in Winchester. This investment will deliver 3 new classrooms, therapy and sensory rooms, outdoor learning and play areas. Councillor Foster has also launched consultations on proposals to expand inclusive provision within 5 mainstream schools in Eastleigh, Andover, Winchester and Havant. And we're currently discussing the provision of over 600 additional specialist places to be created between 2027 and 2030, regardless of what the council geography or the council layout that we have in the coming years. that will be essential for us all, because the number of children who have a education, health and care plan, thereby determining that they are eligible for special educational needs support, has increased from 4,500 to over 18,000 in the past 11 years. So we have a fantastic programme to increase that provision. It is the one area where it is absolutely right that we continue, which is one of the areas where it's absolutely right we continue to invest in our estate and invest in our schools to ensure that we create opportunities for every child in schools that can thrive and meet their needs. Still on the item of children, huge congratulations to the Children's Out of Hours team, who were recognised as Team of the Year at the prestigious National Social Worker of the Year Awards, which I think was last month. The Out of Hours service operates during weekday evenings, weekends and bank holidays to respond to urgent safeguarding concerns and social care issues. As one of the 5 finalists in the category, the team stood out for their inspiring collaboration, dedication to delivering high quality care when it's needed most. And on the theme of awards, I'm pleased to say as well that there's been a further award for Sir Harold Hillier Gardens. They've been awarded with gold in the Parks and Heritage Gardens category of the South and South East in Bloom Awards. It's the 11th consecutive year that the gardens have been awarded the prestigious accolade of gold. The award is testament to the importance of the gardens collection, its educational value, and its appeal as a major visitor attraction within Hampshire. It's a fitting tribute to staff and the very many volunteers who work tirelessly in the gardens to ensure its success. Final thing to say is that we currently are part of a CQC inspection, so I know that both Steve and Liz will be going off this afternoon to do their bit as part of the preparation for that, and good luck to everybody in adult social care who is currently going through that process and quite rightly engaging in one that will test our service and our resilience in adult social care. That is the end of the roundup. So let's move to the first item. It's item 6 on your agenda. It's the Your Hampshire Today and for Tomorrow Hampshire County Council Strategic Plan. Steph, you're going to introduce it for us.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Cabinet. I'm pleased to introduce for Cabinet's consideration Hampshire County Council's proposed strategic plan for 2025 to 2028, titled Your Hampshire Today and for Tomorrow. This follows scrutiny by the Hampshire 2050 and Corporate Services Select Committee earlier in October. The plan sets out the County Council's strategic direction for the next 3 years during a time of significant change for local government in Hampshire. The current plan runs until the end of this year, and a refresh of our strategic plan therefore comes at a very pivotal moment for us, shaped by 2 national policy developments. Firstly, devolution, and of course, local government reorganisation. Both of these fundamentally reshape our operating context as a local authority, and the strategic plan reflects our engagement with both agendas and ensures we remain focused on delivering for residents throughout our transition. Traditionally, our strategic plan has spanned 4 years, but based on what we know, given the timetable for reorganisation, with vesting day for the new unitary authorities currently expected to happen in May 2028, we've adopted a shorter 3-year timeframe to ensure that our strategic priorities are clear during this period, as well as to help ensure continuity of purpose and focus during the transition period. Should there be changes to government's policy or any delay, we can obviously review the plan at that point and adjust it to reflect that. As you will be aware, we did undertake a mid-term review of the existing strategic plan to reflect a post-COVID context that we were working in, and so of course would have the opportunity to come back and reflect an updated context for what is an important document for the Council. In terms of the plan itself, rather than just listing priorities for our services during the length of the plan, the document intends instead to provide a strategic narrative that reaffirms our commitment to providing high-quality public services, setting out what residents can expect from us and what we ask for them in return, reflecting the values and the culture we want to maintain as an organisation, and provide a guide for services in terms of where our efforts will be directed towards. Central to the plan is the Hampshire Pledge, which you will recall, Leader, you launched earlier this year. It articulates the County Council's commitment to continue delivering vital services despite financial pressures, as well as setting out a partnership approach with our residents to help keep costs down and services running. The plan is structured around 4 commitments that will shape our work and resource allocation. The first is keeping you healthy, well and independent, which seeks to support residents to live independently, promote well-being, especially for young people and vulnerable adults. The second commitment is about giving communities the best chance to thrive, enabling economic growth, infrastructure development and environmental sustainability, whilst maximising the opportunities of devolution and LGR. The third commitment focuses around keeping you, your families and friends safe, so ensuring that we're safeguarding our children and adults, tackling road traders, and working with our partners such as police, fire, health and the voluntary sector to help keep our community safe. And then the final commitment is providing innovative services that you need and value. And this is about how we're transforming how we deliver services, making them simpler, more accessible and improving continuously. It includes embracing digital innovation and being transparent about our performance. And you'll notice that innovation and transformation are themes throughout the new plan. Continuous improvement of services will be vital for us as we move forward over the next 3 years to ensure that our services remain viable and continue to meet the needs of our residents, and also ensure that we are well placed for our future organisation as that transitions into a future different arrangement. The strategic plan is intentionally high level to give that strategic clarity and direction during what will be a period of significant transition. And we will measure the actions and performance through metrics that will be embedded into our service level plans and monitor through the corporate performance assurance framework. Cabinet will note that within the report we are proposing to review that framework to ensure that it aligns with the new commitments of the strategic plan and meets our priority around being transparent about the County Council's performance, as well as aligning where it's appropriate to the government's forthcoming local government outcomes framework, which is described in the report. So finally, just in summary, the strategic plan seeks to provide a clear focus framework for the County Council as we transition into a new structure of local government for Hampshire, and balancing continuity and transformation with ambition and realism. Very happy to take questions.
Steph, thank you so much. So this is something that falls under the 2050 portfolio, and it's something that's particularly relevant to corporate services. So let me ask Zoe to just give us a bit of an update. We have just to make everyone aware, we have a letter from the chairman of the 2050 Select Committee who passed on some thoughts from the Select Committee to us all as an appendix to the pack, and that's on page 25, should you wish to look at it.
Yes, and I was also in attendance at that committee, so listened with great intent, obviously, to their debate. First of all, just to thank yourself, Steph, and I know Jack, who's also not here. I think from the scrutiny committee, it was very clear that when you have something like a strategy, language is really important because that's what resonates with people when we talk about commitments, achievements and performance. So I just want to thank yourself, because I know yourself and Jack took that away from the scrutiny panel, and you did listen, and there are amendments in there to some of the language that we've used within the strategic plan you have in front of you today. And that was really important for both of us to listen to that debate. And it was a really long, intense and very detailed debate, and we listened, we understood, and that was really important when we talk about that language in our strategy, but also when we were talking about our intent and when we talk about our commitment. And I know the key themes in the chairman's letter was about our commitments to those Hampshire residents, our long-term intent and our legacy beyond 2028. And I know you had a nod there to devolution and LGR, but I think it was very clear that actually we also wanted to set the direction and the intent of travel beyond that 2028. The feedback was also on the clarity on our commitment to our environment and inclusivity, and how the document will lead into our performance framework and monitoring of such commitments, and other strategies like our local nature recovery strategy, local transport plan, and our public health. As you suggested, Steph, that the strategy itself is very important because it talks about our services, our delivery, our pledge and our commitment. And some of that is also about our ongoing efficiencies within our service, and that's really vital as we are still battling, as we know, funding and service delivery and the pressures we have both in SEND and adult and healthcare. However, we also start to look at transformation and innovation and continual improvement, and that's really, really important to us. This document is important in steering our direction. It is important for staff, stakeholders, and the residents of Hampshire. And like I said, it gives in detail our pledge to those and our commitment to our county. I just want to make an amendment to enhance the amendments that I know you have added, Steph, in the language that you've used within the strategy. So I would like to propose amendments to page 5, just to enhance the commitments to align with some of the language changes that we've made throughout the document. So I don't know if we can...
Yeah, so I think so I'm very happy to second the amendment on the basis that the recommendations on page 5 better reflect the comments and also the debate that was held at the Select Committee. And I know that we've looked at this to make sure that hopefully does that for us all. I think what we need to do is just possibly adjourn for a moment while we get that up on screen so that everyone can see the amendments that we wish to make. So for those of us in the room, and hopefully on the webcast as well, you can see the proposed amendments now that are highlighted in yellow. Zoe, do you want to talk to those first?
Yeah, just to go through them, there are no changes to Commitment 1. Commitment 2, you can see that we've enhanced the commitment looking after our environment by embedding our commitment to climate change action and climate resilience within our work. We've added a new one under Commitment 2, which has helped Hampshire make the most of emerging skills and innovation to address some of the biggest challenges. For Commitment 3, we've added a new commitment, and that is to build climate resilience and work towards reducing emissions to support the safety and well-being of our residents. And Commitment 4, we've included additional 2 words to enhance the commitment, where it says, ensure continuous improvement and transformation creates digital inclusivity, easy-to-use services, the benefits the residents, and reflect the best value of sustainability both today and for tomorrow.
Super, thanks. So we have those amendments both proposed and seconded and on the table for us. Let me check whether anyone's got any questions either about the amendments or the substantive part of the report. So Jan.
Yes, I've just got one question. Can I just say I'm really pleased to see the amendments with the commitment to the climate change resilience in there, given the amount of work we've done since 2017, 2019. I think that's really important. It continues to remain part of that. My question is around, for you, Steph, is how, having put this good strategy in place, how do we demonstrate to our members and, more importantly, to our residents that we are actually achieving those commitments we're making here today? Thank you.
Thank you. So I think, as I mentioned when I presented the report, we are looking to review our performance assurance framework. And I think that's important because things have moved on. The plan, it is a different plan to what we have today. And so we do need to ensure that the framework aligns with what we want to be able to demonstrate in terms of our performance and be more transparent, particularly as one of the commitments we talk about our performance, promoting our commitment to performance transparency. So we will be looking to do that this year and, well, into next year, 2026, obviously won't be concluded by December, and obviously we'll be bringing that back into Cabinet. We will be doing that alongside developing our narrative and being able to tell the success that we have made in terms of the programmes that we are delivering to help achieve our commitments. So very much, rather than just being a source of metrics, we will be able to show our residents actually the improvements and the impact that that has had. We will, of course, use the data sets that the government will be collecting through the new upcoming local government outcome framework. That's once that has been completely landed, just to give us a bit of a proxy measure for success, not about league tables, but certainly to just reassure ourselves we're where we think we should be.
Super, thanks. Any other questions or debate, everybody? No? All good. So we have the amended proposal on the table. Can I ask for all of those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Steph, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone that's done all the work as well. I should just say that this is not it sounds like quite dry sometimes when you're talking about corporate plan, but it's not. It's the thing that underpins everything. And it's important that we ensure that it is both agile and responsive, and that's exactly what this does.
Just do the other recommendation.
Oh, sorry, we've got to do the recommendations as well. Okay, sorry. So we therefore need to do the other recommendations, recommendations 2 and 3? Okay, right. So we also have recommendations 2 that we approve the strategic plan as set out in Appendix 1, and that we recommend to full council that it's adopted as part of the County Council's policy framework, and that we agree to a review of the corporate performance assurance framework to ensure it aligns with the new strategic plan and the proposed government's proposed local government outcomes framework. Lots of frameworks. All of those in favour of those 2 as well?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. So moving on to item 7 is the Outdoor and Study Centres business plan. Now we have a couple of non-executive members who'd like to speak to this. Probably the best thing is for us to present first and then ask non-executive members to speak. Is that okay? So Patrick and Joe are going to do that for us.
Thank you, Leader. Good morning, Cabinet. The paper we're presenting today is the medium-term business plan for the outdoor and study centres. Now, you'll see within the paper there are a number of recommendations for consideration, but in essence, it will take you through the business plan, the value the services bring, and the considerable progress to date, and some critical necessary investment and the forward look for the centres, particularly Calshot. Can I introduce Joe Heath, Deputy Director for Universal Services, and Joe is going to take us through the headlines of the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Good morning, Cabinet members. The medium-term business plan you see before you is developed for all centres, and it was in response to the alternative resolution proposed by Cabinet in March, following the decision regarding the Specialist Secure Welfare Children's Home in Stubbington. On the 1st of August, I'm pleased to say that the study centres moved across to Universal Services Directorate and joined the outdoor centres, and therefore the business plan covers all 6 centres, 5 in Hampshire and 1 in Wales. These centres collectively deliver high-quality environmental and adventurous activities with over 25,000 children taking part in educational activities alongside 80,000 residents of all ages who use the centres for recreation. The centres have been performing strongly with a 72% increase in income over the past 5 years and on course to meet operational costs, and those are above the line costs. This has been achieved through increasing reasons for people to visit the centres, unlocking the accommodation potential, and increasing the market share for educational activities. These 3 principles continue to underline the business plan presented here today. The innovative and transformative approach that we've taken has seen greater exploitation of great digital solutions, stronger partnership working, and new offers such as Airbnb at a number of our centres. And whilst the aim for the centres is to continue to move towards covering all costs to the organisation, the asset costs to keep these centres operationally safe and suitable are significant, particularly for Cowshot. The costs for essential maintenance over the next 3 years have been identified as just under £2 million, with Cowshot bearing the brunt of this at 1.6 million. But this will take us through to 2028. If approved, during this period, we will investigate alternative delivery models for the future provision, and this, along with implementing this mid-term business plan, will put the outdoor and study centres in the best possible position for their long-term sustainability. Thank you.
Joe, thanks so much. Before I ask Kirsty to speak, Keith and Pal, I think you'd both like to say a few words. So do you want to come up and come together if you like?
I'm for Pal jumping first. I'm not the gentlemanly way.
Yeah. So welcome, Councillor Keith House, Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Nick. And we did have a really good discussion on this for about an hour yesterday at Universal Services Select Committee, and I was a substitute, and well, there we are. So I had the opportunity to contribute that I wouldn't normally have. And it was a good discussion. And the idea of unifying the centres with some common themes, the direction clearly feels good. And it's also particularly good to see the renewed commitment to Stubbington, given that just 6 months ago the council was trying to close it. So that's really, really positive move. But it's Cowshot that concerns me most for a variety of reasons. I know that if we go back far enough into history, this council had a valiant attempt to try to close Cowshot, and it actually split the Conservative group at the time, and the decision was made to keep it open, which I think was the right decision. It's provided a really valuable contribution to sport and education over decades for the benefit of Hampshire children in particular, but also for the wider community. That's excellent. I think, well, frankly, one of your Conservative colleagues raised at the committee yesterday, I don't think it was Powell, so I don't think I'm stealing her line on this. This isn't really a business plan, it's a description of a way forward. There are no numbers here, so I think it fails that test of a business plan, but that's really a moot point and rather beside my main point, which is that I think the report fails the duck test. I mentioned this yesterday and I got blank looks, so I'll explain the duck test. The duck test is the one that says if it looks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, then it probably is a duck. And in this case, the duck is a disguised report for a serious potential closure of services that are very valued by the community. And that is very much shown up on page 53 and explicitly on page 54 of the report. The table, the chart that's on page 54, which very clearly states, alongside the text on page 53, that unless you can get a private sector partner to deliver the services in the hangars, whether they then maintain them is a separate debate, this would mean the potential to close one of the best velodromes in the country, it would mean the proposal to close one of the few, if not the only, indoor ski slope in the county, and also the climbing wall too. And I'm not sure that's widely understood by people who've read this report. And certainly it hasn't been given publicity that I would expect it to be deserved for a very, very serious change in service provision. I think one of the other points that strikes me with a 3-year business plan here is that this council doesn't have 3 years of life left. And it was a bit that was missing from your previous debate that I expected to be picked up, because it was picked up at the Select Committee on Hampshire 2050. That's one of the key things we need to be doing is assisting with the transition to the new unitary authorities by working in collaboration with both the 2 unitaries and the 11 districts on the future of service provision to meet the desires and needs of those explicit communities, not necessarily the county as a whole. And this paper, as written, pretty much sets the train for what could be final decisions before those unitaries come into place and have the ability to take decisions for themselves for their patch of Hampshire. And I do think one of our key responsibilities as a council now, it's not a political point or an organisational point particularly, but it's a general point, is that we shouldn't be making what could be hard to unpick decisions for our future unitary authorities that might want to set a different direction. Clearly we've got to think about them very, very clearly, but not set them in stone, particularly where they involve a very significant service that's provided much value to tens of thousands of children. I declare an interest. I used that ski slope and velodrome when I was in the Scouts when I was 15, and it was, it wasn't a life-changing event, but it was one that stuck in my memory 45 years later as something which was significant as an educational opportunity, and something that really contributed to my life as it has to tens of thousands of other children. So I'd urge Cabinet to adjust the recommendations here to make explicit, to provide some reassurance to the community of the New Forest and also the wider community of Hampshire that we are not taking a decision here that could potentially lead to the closure of the velodrome, the closure of the ski slope and the closure of the climbing wall for the reasons that I've set out. Maybe that means an opportunity just for this explicit bit of the strategy to pause and have a rethink and come back with something which is clearer, sharper and doesn't threaten future decisions. Thank you.
Keith, thanks very much. I know we'll come back to those comments as part of the debate, I'm sure. Pam.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak. The last time I sat here was back in March, I think, when we were talking about the Stubbington Study Centre. And when the report came to Universal Services Committee, I was really, really pleased. And I thought, wow, this is really good. My residents are so happy that we saved the study centre. It was a really good campaign. And thank you to all the officers, yourself, and the community for doing that for us, not only for us, for our children. We're corporate parents and we've saved it for our children who benefit, who go there. But there's more to that. Lots more can be done to these centres, and I'm really pleased that the study centres and the outdoor centres, you've put them together, and the report was very good. What I want to say is that I know, we had comments yesterday about the business plan not being quite a business plan, but you have to start somewhere. So I think it's a very good start. It's not granular just yet, but once we know that we can ensure that funding for our centres, it's really important. So I'm really happy with the business plan. There's going to be more details coming through, which I'm sure the officers will let us know. We don't have the figures because some of them are confidential, so we have to wait for that. And it's important that we save these centres, which we are. And the £2 million investment is very important. In fact, I was stopped on Sunday at our remembrance service in Stubbington, and a resident came up to me and said, "Isn't it good news that £2 million will be invested in our centres?" And I said to her, yes, it's going to Cabinet, and hopefully if it gets through, it will be really good. But my ask is, I know some of the centres need a lot more investment than others, namely Calshot needs more investment. However, please do not forget the other centres too. So the £2 million investment that's going through, or will go through hopefully, should be sort of like the other centres should be getting their little bit share too. And I'm really pleased. I was so excited, and I really get my words all mumbled and jumbled when I'm very excited about this. So thank you for bringing this to the Universal Services Select Committee, and thank you for bringing it to Cabinet. So this is very short and sweet, so I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Pal, thanks so much. You were as eloquent as you were when you were speaking in defence of Stubbington back in March, so don't worry about that. Let me just check. Tim, Rod, did you want to say anything on this? No, all good then. So Kirsty, would you like to introduce it from Cabinet's perspective?
Thank you very much, Nick. Absolutely. I've been delighted to visit all of the studies and centres and outdoor centres in Hampshire. I'm afraid I haven't made it over to Wales yet, Leader. But our centres are much more than just places to visit. They're places where young people's confidence grows, friendships form, and lifelong memories are made. Where adventure, team building, and trying new things takes priority, and resilience is learned and tested. Something I embodied last week when I donned some skis and reluctantly took to the slope for the first time in my life, talking to children just like me. They were learning and embracing a completely new skill with their peers. We know the County Council's finances are under immense pressure. It is well documented, and we will hear more later on that under items 9 and 10, I'm sure. I recognise there's been a suggestion previously that this type of provision is not a core service. I dispute that, and I'm so pleased to be able to bring a paper to Cabinet that champions the fantastic work done at these centres, all of them, and gives the financial backing to continue that work for the remainder of this County Council. Not only that, it recognises that in order to secure these centres for generations to come, we must leave them in the best possible shape. And that's why I'm calling for interested partners, charities, businesses and user groups to come and speak to me, speak to us, and let us know how you can work with us to shape this provision for generations to come. Let us all work together to ensure that these centres are thriving, are accessible to our communities, are loved for generations to come by pupils and parents alike, and give people of all ages the ability to try new skills and learn new hobbies, whether on the water, connecting with nature, practicing for the slopes, or adventuring through the forest. There's been a drive to transform the offer and make the outdoor centres more rounded and available to a wider audience. And I'm so pleased that the study centres have come into the fold and can now also be opened up in that same vein. There's immediate work to do to market these special places during the school holidays and look at what more we can do to already maximise user groups and encourage wider recreational visits at the weekends. The work to enable camping at Tile Barn, Runways End and Calshot at weekends and during the school holidays is one example of what has worked well for the centres, and there's untapped potential at both Stubbington and Minstead. And I was pleased to be able to discuss that when visiting Minstead last week and meeting the new centre manager there. I'm really pleased to hear Councillor Hare here today and recognising the value of Stubbington, and I want to thank her for always championing Stubbington throughout her work and reassure her that her plea on funds has been heard. Unfortunately, Councillor House, to think that you can see a £2 million investment and a paper bursting with pride at the offer we are able to deliver and turn it into a death notice for one of our most loved centres is frankly unbelievable. But let me categorically say that you couldn't be further from the truth. You've chosen to misinterpret a truth around ecology and rising sea level of the Calshot Spit with the cessation of much-loved activities, rather than the clear direction of travel, noting the environmental challenges at that site. Local government is changing in Hampshire. We have a mayor coming and they will have priorities and projects which they wish to champion. There'll be changes to how local government is made up, and these centres sit within that local government envelope. We've been open about the fact that local council provision will be changing in this report because it's vital for our pupils, our visitors and adventurers of all ages to know that there may be changes, but change does absolutely not equate to closure. Our outdoor education service is much loved and valued, and this paper and its recommendations puts the centres in the best possible shape to navigate that change and work with new partnerships to deliver modern, high-quality activities and leisure opportunities to be on the best possible footing for the future, whatever that future may look like, Leader.
Kirsty, thank you very much. So, before we move on to any debate, do we have any questions of the officers? So, Zoe.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Can I ask about climate resilience and adaptation at our centres, and how we may manage climate change already here, such as the rising sea levels and flooding, and how this may affect our delivery and our services, both now and in the long term? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huggins. Yes, the issue at Calshot is of storms, extreme weather and increasing sea level rise is one that we're well aware of, and we monitor that closely. The issue of historic buildings and recreational facilities on the coast in Hampshire and the pressures and the issues that brings is well known, and we work with organisations such as the Environment Agency and coastal partners closely. The report indicates how that we are going to explore how we continue to deliver and adapt to these pressures through alternative delivery models and thinking creatively about how we use our assets that are most vulnerable to coastal change.
Thanks. Liz, you got one.
I had the pleasure last week with Councillor North and Councillor Barman to visit Minstead, having previously visited Stubbington. It is on. Sorry. Right, is that better? Yeah, okay. Having visited Minstead last week, I was absolutely bowled over by the manager and the staff and their enthusiasm for taking the centre forward and filling in the gaps. Now, they've only been in Universal Services for a couple of months. Have we seen any progress in sort of working together with our outdoor centres, or are they still in the pipeline?
It's great that you were able to, along with other councillors, visit Minstead. It's a beautiful site, and I would urge other councillors to visit when they get the chance. So yeah, we developed a detailed transition plan to help us identify quick wins and also some of the longer term opportunities of working together. One of those is shared marketing. So we delayed our delivery of our brochure for schools by a few months, just so that we could actually combine study centres into that. And that's been sent to 2,500 schools across Hampshire. We're looking at developing the non-schools market for the study centres because that's been their focus. And now we're looking to expand that with the connections that we have through the outdoor centres. We now have a centralised booking system which has moved all the manual bookings online for the study centres and the outdoor centres combined, making it more accessible and much more efficient. And we've also been able to share expertise, and as you'll know, the study centres are particularly expert in delivering high quality educational environmental activities, and so they've been able to share some of that learning with our outdoor centres, and we've been able to share instructors, which has reduced our costs as well. So yeah, I'm pleased to say that they've integrated really well. I had the opportunity of meeting 140 staff all together. We brought them all together for one day when we had a gap in the calendar and we could do so. And we'll be continuing to develop and exploit those opportunities of bringing the centres together to achieve that sort of greater outcome and continue to deliver high quality activities for all our young people and local communities.
Thanks very much, Jo. Ros.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Jo, for such a good report today. £2 million indicates a significant commitment by the County Council and recognition of the value that the centres deliver for our residents, schools and our local communities. And you've spoken a little bit about this already, but can you just give me some more information about why is this money so important to keep the centres safe and operational over the 3-year period, please?
Thank you. So yes, the £2 million investment we're talking about actually represents a critical commitment by the County Council to keep our centres open, safe and operational over the next 3 years. Whilst I mentioned earlier about the centres making significant progress towards financial sustainability, and we're hoping that we're expecting them to deliver above line surplus position within the next year. The challenge does lie within those asset costs, and a lot of them are essential maintenance. We've talked about Calshot accounting for the majority of these costs. Given the nature of the buildings, the location, we are obliged obviously to keep them safe and suitable. But to be clear, that lease that we have runs out in 21-20, and a lot of the money that we need to spend, we would have to spend no matter what activities in some ways we were running from that centre. But it's not just about Calshot. As Councillor Hare mentioned, Stubbington and the other centres are also incredibly important. We've worked with our property colleagues to really understand what the requirements are for essential maintenance over the next 3 years, and they've informed that ask. But it's not about expansion, it's about protecting a core service and ensuring continuity for the 25,000 children and 80,000 other residents who benefit from the outdoor learning and recreation every year. What we anticipate is over the next 3 years, we'll be implementing the business plan and growing the income with the intent that we'll work towards reducing those liabilities and being able to contribute more to these organisational asset costs.
Thanks. And Jan, you've got a question.
Yes, it's only really following on from Councillor House's comments, and this paper is a really good one. It's really pleasing to see the level of investment across all our centres, but there are sort of 56 references to Calshot, and I appreciate we don't own that site, and 21-20 will see most of us out, including our great-grandchildren, I suspect. But can you give us any assurances about the future of that site and the level of investment that we're putting in, and perhaps outline some of the challenges we face there? Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Councillor Warwick. The discussion at the Select Committee was definitely around what the future of Calshot is, and the short answer is that what we're looking at is no, we're not looking to close it. You know, that was what really came out yesterday through sort of the background discussion. And you'll see that the report states that Calshot is the County Council's largest liability of all the centres. And the facilities, as we know, are likely to be increasingly affected by coastal change, as we talked about today. The report gives officers the mandate to explore alternative arrangements and partnerships to reduce the County Council's liabilities whilst keeping these services running along the public benefits that these provide, which we've already talked about. What it also does is talk to and refers to the planning for future service delivery. And delivery, if the impact of coastal change accelerates, as we expect it to do, that the extent that some of the buildings become inoperable. And so you'll see within the fourth recommendation of the report that any alternative delivery proposal at Calshot will, like any other centre, will be subject to further decisions by Cabinet in any case. So we can give you that assurance that we are doing further work on this. Will we bring any proposals back? But it's a very positive direction of travel. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions, everybody? All good. Any debate? Stephen, and then Steve.
Thank you. I have one point to make. I can understand that people are concerned about the future of these centres. And what this report is saying to me is that for the next 3 years, whilst we have the responsibility for these centres, Hampshire County Council is committed to keeping them going, upgrading them, and being in a position to hand over to the new unitary authorities when they are set up viable concerns so that they may continue. That seems to me to be an utterly laudable strategy that we're going for. But there is the elephant in the room, I think, that is the longer term threat to the viability of these centres, and that is that we are going to have to hand them over, if local government's reorganisation goes ahead, to unitary authorities, which are by definition going to be smaller than Hampshire County Council, and therefore may be less able to make the commitments that we are making today in terms of keeping them going. And the geography is going to mean that there's an uneven split as to who has to take on those liabilities. So there's a problem there. And the outdoor centre in Wales doesn't fit easily in any geographic solution that could be come up with in Hampshire. So who will be taking on the liability for that? An unanswerable question at the moment. So I think we're doing the right thing here by coming up with a business strategy that says we are going to commit to these centres and have viable businesses to hand over to whatever the new structure is. But let's not avoid the challenge that the challenge is going to be to get our positive approach handed over successfully to our successors. That's where the threat lies, and we need to be thinking about that as members and as officers.
Thanks very much, Steve.
Thank you, Leader. First of all, I wanted to thank Councillor North for her introduction and the apposite words she mentioned about some others fear-mongering. This is a phenomenal investment, and I'm really pleased to see it. I'm particularly pleased as I'm a regular user. Unlike maybe someone who used it at 15, I use it pretty much every month through the year. So maybe a declaration of interest, I'm a member of the camping club there. It's a phenomenal site, not just for the centre itself, the buildings, but also what goes on around them. The history of the site is incredible. It's wartime history with the Sunderland and the aircraft that were based there. Quite remarkable. The climbing that goes on there, the sea swimming. My wife actually goes swimming there right the way through the year, including in January. I hasten to add I don't. But it is a phenomenally great site, and to see this investment is really welcome. Not just in Calshot, but also in the outdoor centres. I've been fortunate enough in my education role alongside Councillor Chad to visit all our study centres, with the exception of Wales so far. And they are amazing. And the stories from some of our students and children who use them are uplifting, to say the least. What we're doing is remarkable. I think it'll be a tough act for the unitaries, assuming they follow, to continue that legacy that we're leaving. But one thing I would urge members of the public to do is to encourage them to lobby their MPs, to lobby their schools, to use the facilities and to make sure that they are better used and better funded going forward. If they're used well, they're run well, so they will make money. So please use them.
Super, thanks. Zoe.
Thank you, Leader. As someone that also lives in a community that's very close to Stubbington Study Centre, both as a child and my children have both attended it. And I think when we talk about decisions and particularly here today, specifically the outdoor centres, it's important that we understand the location, the services that they offer. We've experienced it, we've listened to our residents, and I have also used Calshot, not as frequently as yourself, Steve, but I have used it. And in making decisions, it's really important that we understand that. And, 6 months ago when we were having discussions about Stubbington Study Centre, we've come a long way, and I really welcome bringing all of the centres under one directorate. I think that makes sense from both financial forecasting, planning, risk mitigation, liability, but also looking at the future business plan. I really welcome that. I also just want to again, echo everyone's sentiments. I really do believe that maybe this is not a full business plan and that detail will follow, but it is a framework. It commits the £2 million worth of investment. That is very clear in this report. It also strives for that transformation and innovation and that continued improvement with services. So follows on from that corporate strategy that we had a conversation with earlier, and it is about setting that direction of that within the next 3 years, where we want sustainable continued continuity within the services that we deliver, but also future-proofing them. and that is now and beyond 2028. And that report is very clear that that is what we're looking at, but also doesn't shy away from being realistic and the challenges that we face, both from the future financial positions of those and the future investment and liability of those centres, but also the realisation of, as my question indicated, the climate change impacts that are here now, such as sea levels and flooding. So I really welcome the report. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any other comments, everyone? No? All good. Jackie, you've sent us a letter which is appended to the report after the Select Committee yesterday. Would you like to say a few words about that?
Just to say, really, that both Councillor Hare and Councillor Thorne have really summed up what happened at the committee, and as so much that we really value these centres, and I think you only have to look at the attendance numbers to realise how much they are used, and really we value the report, and certainly it was approved by the majority of the committee.
Thanks. Other Select Committee chairs? Juliet.
Thank you very much, Joe, for presenting the report. Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I was so encouraged to see this report here today. Great news for our children and young people. And I think there's nothing better you can do for children and young people than give them to experience nature, the outdoors. And I'm pleased to see that we're so committed to nature recovery at this council, because if we give our children a love of nature at these early ages, they will fight for nature recovery in the future. So a huge thank you.
Thanks. Everyone else okay? In which case, we have the recommendations in front of us. To sum up from me, I think this journey starts in the conversations that we had about Stubbington in March. And at that point, we made a commitment to review all of our assets and all of our outdoor and study centres, and to look at ways by which we could maximise both their use and ensure their longevity and their future, and that absolutely includes Calshot. And having made that commitment, which was only some 6-7 months ago, I think you've done a fantastic job to get to this place in terms of having some clear ideas of how we should manage things. And we have that challenge, as Stephen has pointed out, of having the point in 2 to 3 years' time when the county council no longer exists, and it doesn't actually matter which of the maps eventually the government choose in terms of the new councils. There will be a study centre or an outdoor centre in each of those new councils, no matter the configuration. And the consequence of that, I think, is that for all of us who will be sitting around the table, and Keith will be there in his role as the leader of Eastleigh, and as we begin to talk about whatever map the government decides, finding a way by which we can still benefit from the scale that is brought by all of these centres working together, and the breadth of offer is a really important one to ensure that they continue, because to lose them would be a tragedy for the county. And we have to be completely truthful. And I fear that as we head towards elections next May, if what happens in Hampshire is similar to that which happened earlier in the year, there will be all sorts of untruths said about the way in which councils operate, or the plans that councils might have, or the waste that councils might or might not have. It's really important for us to be completely upfront with people. Calshot, we know, is under threat from climate change. We don't know how long it will still be able to operate, but we have buildings there that are of national importance, and that not just those assets that we have, but also that the fort that is part of English heritage, the English heritage estate, and all of that needs to be protected in some form. And so finding ways by which we can do that and finding ways by which we can continue to provide all of the services that are there is really important to all of us. But actually, what better also to look at a site where we can begin to move towards a place where our children can begin to actually study the impact of climate change on part of the coastline. And this is something that occurs going along the entirety of our coast. You only need to look at the debate going on a bit further on the coast at Hurst Spit and for Hurst Castle to see the kind of conversation that is happening. That doesn't mean that we walk away from Cowshot. Keith is absolutely right. An election was effectively fought over that, and it was his party's administration in 1995 that signed the 150-year lease that places Cowshot in our ownership until 2120. I don't plan to be around then. I'm not sure any of us do. But we have that responsibility to look after the site for that time, and we have a responsibility to continue to provide all of the services, to enhance them, to expand them. And that is a commitment that we made when we made the decision not to close Stubbington and to the wider estate back in March. And this is the beginning of that journey. It might not be a business plan, but it is the beginning of one, and it is the beginning of some really excellent work that would enable us to hand over to the successor councils an estate that is providing fantastic services for the children and young people and families and residents of Hampshire. It is gives us the ability to get the best possible outcomes for those services and make them as sustainable as possible, and absolutely ensures that they will continue to be assets, that as long as those new councils continue to invest in them as we are now, we'll be able to offer those services through to the future. I would urge my council colleagues, when we get to those conversations, to consider ways by which we can ensure the new councils, no matter how they might look, work together, because as an estate, this works really well. And it also overcomes the issue of one being way outside of Hampshire for us to decide who gets the benefit or possibly the challenge of an outdoor centre in Wales. But that in itself provides huge benefit to many hundreds of children each year who get to go experience the Brecon Beacons and the outdoor centre there. So I'm very happy to support this recommendation. We have the recommendations in front of us on page 27, in paragraphs 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you very much, Jan, because I'd scrolled down too far on my screen. All of those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you so much. Joe, Patrick, and to your teams, thank you so much for all the work you've done so far since March, because I know it was a tricky decision in March, but we've got a really positive outcome as a consequence of that. Thank you. So we move on to the local nature recovery strategy. I think that's Natalie and Laura. So welcome to both of you. I think Natalie's kicking off, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Leader. Local nature recovery strategies are a new system of spatial strategies for nature recovery covering the whole of England. They're the key mechanism for planning and delivering the National Nature Recovery Network and are a package of measures introduced by the Environment Act 2021 to reverse nature's decline. The LNRS has been designed to work with all relevant environmental measures and to help link them together in a coherent and effective way. In July 2023, the County Council was appointed by the Secretary of State for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs as the responsible authority for preparing the LNRS for the whole of Hampshire, including the administrative areas for Hampshire County Council, Portsmouth and Southampton City Councils, and parts of the New Forest and South Downs National Parks that are within Hampshire. The LNRS for Hampshire was prepared in partnership following stakeholder engagement that took place early last year and was subject to public consultation in May and June this year. following which it was considered by the Hampshire 2015 Corporate Services Select Committee. Following the consultation, the final version of the NRS has been produced. The strategy has been updated considerably to take into account the comments that have been received. It is recommended that Cabinet approve the local nature strategy for Hampshire and publication and delegate authority to the Director of 2050 in consultation with the leader to agree any non-substantive changes to the strategy required prior to its publication, and that the Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs be notified of the County Council's intention to publish the local nature recovery strategy for Hampshire, and that following confirmation from the Secretary of State, the local nature recovery strategy for Hampshire be published on the County Council's website in December. And lastly, subject to your approval, the strategy will be formally launched on the 8th of December, an event to be held in Ashburton Hall. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And sorry, Laura, did you want to add anything, or you're here to answer questions? Well done. But most importantly, this has been quite a journey, and we've been talking about it as it's gone along, and that you and your team have done a fantastic job in getting to this point. There's been input from a very large number of stakeholders, and each time we've had to go back around, or we've been pleased to go back around in a route to look at the different comments that they've made and to make sure that we're taking that into account. And one of the big challenges that we have is just the fantastic diversity of landscape and of nature that we have in Hampshire, and the challenges that brings are that there's so much of it that sometimes people aren't so pleased that we might want to protect quite as much as we would wish. So let me check. Any questions or comments, everybody? Kirsty.
Thank you, Leader, and thanks so much for this. Since preparations of the strategy began, the government has amended the standard methodology and massively increased the housing numbers expected to be delivered across Hampshire. I know in Test Valley that's increased by 78%. What impact will that have on the ability to deliver the nature recovery across Hampshire?
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're hoping that it won't have a significant impact on the ability to deliver houses or the strategy. So the strategy is really important from a planning point of view. It will be a material consideration in all planning decisions, both from a local plan point of view and in planning applications. The aim of it is to guide where biodiversity net gain and nature recovery can take place, and hopefully that will help development come forward in the right places with the BNG in the right places, and help focus funding for nature recovery to support those developments. So it's not intended to stop development taking place. It's very much there to facilitate, you know, the BNG and the nature recovery that's needed to support those developments as they come forward.
Super, thanks. Any other comments from Cabinet? Questions? No? All good? Select committee chairs. Any comments? Rob, did you want to? Your committee scrutinised it. All good? Okie dokie. In which case, then, just to sum up slightly, we are incredibly lucky having, I think, almost uniquely, with the possible exception of Devon, having 2 national parks within our county boundary, and 2 significant areas of national landscape, the old areas of outstanding natural beauty, protecting them and ensuring that the enormous diversity of nature that we have within the county and the landscapes that we have are protected as much as possible is vital to us all. One of the greatest challenges and one of the greatest threats, I think, does come from the fact that the government has increased these housing targets for our district and borough colleagues without any kind of transitional arrangement, and as a consequence there is a huge pressure in very many areas of the county that will be seeing really important pieces of natural environment overtaken by development, and so this is another piece of work that is vitally important to us all to do what we can to protect what makes Hampshire so special. The recommendations are on pages 61. They're in paragraphs 2 to 5. I'm very happy to move those. All of those in favour. Again, carried. Laura, Natalie, thank you so much for all of the work, and Laura in particular, thanks for being so patient with this. I know it's been a long journey to get to this point, and we'll see you on the 8th of December in here with lots of other people. Item 9, the Q2 financial update. Andy.
Thank you, Leader, Cabinet. It's the first of 2 reports covering finance today. The first one being the Q2 finance monitoring update. So the purpose of this report is to provide an update on the financial position for 25-26 as at Q2, and it sets out the current forecast variance against the budget through to year end. If I could just pick up some of the key points covered in the report. So within section D, we set out the forecast position, which is an underspend of 32.4 million. And that's really good news compared to where we were at Q1. So it's an increase in that overall forecast from 21 million at Q1 through to that 32. Within that overall position, directorates are forecast to underspend by 6.4 million. But within that number, there's some big variances that are masked by that 6.4. So adults forecast to overspend by 15.7 by year end, but conversely children's forecast to underspend by 20.2 million through to year end. And I'll just put that into context, that 6.4, you will recall from the budget that you set this year through council that we added £120 million worth of growth to the budget. So in the context of that significant investment, it's a marginal kind of underspend on directorates overall. The other key point I guess I would raise in terms of the 32.4 underspend is that 18.6 million of that is due to the underutilisation so far of contingency during the year. Most years prior to this we've used contingency and would forecast that use, but at the moment we're saying it looks like we'll be not utilising all that contingency that we set aside. In terms of the positive impact that has in terms of the budget bridging reserve, so it's important, we drew £64.9 million to set the budget in the current year. So the underspend importantly reduces that draw to 32.5 million. So again, it's remembering that underspends in the context of not setting a balanced budget to start with without a draw from reserves. And what this does, it just reduces that overall draw from reserves in year. In terms of the impact on the BBR going forward, that underspend can be contributed to the BBR if that's where we outturn at the end of this year. And as you'll see in paragraph 14, that would take the forecast balance on the BBR to 109 million. A couple of the key points in the report. Really pleased to report the savings delivery remains remarkably on track. So 25-26, there's a little bit of slippage. So from the 99 million within the budget, we are on track to deliver 94 million, and importantly, overall by 27-28, forecast to deliver that 134 million pound in full. So again, progress is really good on savings. The last point I'd write from the report is the is the DSG, and that forecast net in-year pressure of 140 million, which would take the overall DSG deficit by the end of this year to a cumulative deficit of 353 million. And you'd be aware there's a lot of national attention around that, and we await various announcements through the government, which I'll cover as part of the MTFS report. And I was going to pause there. Leader.
Andy, thank you very much. And you know, lots of very big numbers there, but I think the most important thing is that the trajectory is in the right direction, and that the savings that we are achieving are contributing to the fact that we are underspending, and we are therefore reducing the amount of money we're going to have to withdraw from our reserves at the end of the year, which is a fantastic piece of work by everybody within this council. So, colleagues, questions from anybody? Liz?
Was factored into the forecast. most people, when they think about winter pressures, thinks about adults, but there's things like potholes and flooding and all sorts of other things that can occur in a winter situation. Have we factored those into it?
Yeah, so I guess there's two parts to that answer. So in setting the budgets, we'll have profiled those budgets to take account of our normalised patterns of spend on, on that annual basis across the season. So the budget will reflect that. So in that sense, our normal expenditure will be built in. I guess this was taken, this is the month 5 position for August. So the winter itself wouldn't have kicked in by that point. So what the forecast won't reflect is should there be any particular spikes that are outside the norm through the winter, they won't yet be factored into that forecast. So there is that risk that if suddenly, I mean, it's been very mild so far, but if suddenly there's a dramatic change in the weather and we start experiencing new pressures, then that may feed through to the position.
Stephen.
Yes, thank you. This question really bridges the gap between this paper and the next one. I noticed that the adult health and care position has improved since Q1, and I was wondering what your approach has been to playing this into the medium-term financial strategy.
Yes, thank you. So it will have fed through into the next paper, and to also reassure that between now and setting the actual budget in February, we will continue to keep an eye on how growth and demand both across children and adults impacts the budget. So the team will update the position on a monthly basis, they look at all the trend lines, etc. And we'll update as we go. But in terms of translating this position through to the MTFS, absolutely. In fact, the position in the MTFS is probably a slightly later take on where we're at. So yeah, that will feed through into next year. So effectively, when we get to the MTFS, you'll see that there's been an increase in the adults' growth in the MTFS for next year to take account of the kind of in-year overspend, but also there's been a reduction in the children's growth in the MTFS to take account of their underspend this year.
Zoe.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Andy. A bettering picture forecast. To what extent does the current underspend, though, impact the 26-27 budget forecast?
So again, it's a mix. So as I just responded to Councillor Reid, the kind of growth issues around children and adults will be reflected in the MTFS. So the kind of underspend in children's will be feeding through as part of that reduction in growth. But there are also some one-off savings or one-off items in the forecast that we've got this year. So the big one will be the contingencies of 18.6 million underutilisation so far. But I would expect for a council of our size, we will still need to have contingencies in the budget next year, so that effectively will build in, and we won't reduce the budget for that impact. And there's some other one-off adjustments around the pension investment we made 3 years ago as part of the triennial evaluation. We made a prepayment. That's the last year that prepayment's a one-off in this year. That won't feed through either, but it will feed through in terms of the way we look at those growth forecasts.
Super, thanks. Any other questions, comments? So I should have mentioned to let Jan do her introduction as well before we had questions. So Jan.
Yes, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Andy, for presenting that report. It's a positive report in that it reflects a positive variance against the approved revenue budget, but we're all very aware that the demand-led services, adult social care, children's social care, and the SEND provision haven't gone away and will continue to exert that financial pressure. I think this report reflects so well on our staff. So, Andy, I wanted to thank you and your team, but also every member of the CMT and their staff, because it can't have been an easy thing to invite an expert panel into your department to take a critical look at everything you do. That panel report was thorough and it was detailed, and Cabinet, we were slightly nervous about it at the time, I remember, but actually it's played out well. There were some good suggestions and some very good reassurance for us that we are doing the right thing. But if you reflect back on that expert panel, they said financially we were robust, but there were challenges outside of our sphere of influence that will continue to exert those pressures. So just to say thank you to our staff, thank you for taking on those recommendations, that work and the work of the SP25 savings plays out in front of us in this report and of course into the next report. Thank you, Andy.
Thanks. And sorry, I know Rob wants to come in, but Andy, just one quick question from me. The SP25 savings as yet undelivered, it doesn't mean that we're not going to deliver them. It just means that we haven't been able to deliver them so far. It's a piece of work that's ongoing in this year to deliver them in subsequently, I suppose.
Yeah, that's primarily true. There's a small element of undeliverable savings that won't now be delivered. But overall, there's over-delivery on a number of savings areas and some slippage. So in the round, we still anticipate deliver the entire programme, and slightly more actually. But yeah, the main issue is slippage through to 26, 27.
Super, thanks. So Select Committee Chairs, Rob, I know you wanted to come in.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Andy, I've got a question about the deficit on the DSG reserve. We obviously talked about this a month ago, 2 months ago, on 23rd of September. At that stage, the numbers were slightly lower than they are today. I wrote down 344 for the end of this year and 706 for the end of 2028. They've both crept up. Is that likely to be a trend we see going forward, that those numbers keep on that kind of basis, increasing quarter by quarter, and that 716 million end up being 800 million, 820 million by the time we get to at the end of March 28?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you're right. There is always the risk that DSG deficit continues to grow. It's gone up slightly, as you said, compared to our original forecast. I think one of the key things that we are waiting for is that SEND review and the paper that will come out in January. Well, there's two parts actually. There's the local government finance settlement, where we should get an indication from government as to how we would manage that historic deficit going forward, what the plans would be to effectively clear that deficit. But the more, or the equally important part then is the outcome from that school's white paper on the SEND review. Because until something changes in the system will continue to do what the system does, which at the moment for us has been to drive up that overspend to the EHCP provision, etc. So yeah.
Super, thanks. Select Committee Chairs, anyone else like to say anything? Questions or comments? No. Cabinet, any other comments, questions? Steve?
Just a brief comment, and I'm appreciative of the comments about the DSG in particular and the SEND review, just to express my disappointment that this government has chosen to kick the can down the road again on the SEND review. We do need an answer, and a positive answer, that addresses the financial shortfall as early as possible. This is a national issue, and it's affecting the education of many of our children.
Absolutely, and it's something that, those numbers are very large, and that's indicative of the size of our county rather than the size of our deficit. Proportionately, we're actually not as badly off as some of our neighbours in terms of that as well. Any other comments? No? Jan, did you want to sum up? Or no, you're good. So I made a comment before about the fact that the County Council is not a speedboat, it's an oil tanker. And this shows us that there is incredible work going on to try and move that oil tanker. And we will hear next in the next paper some of the other things that are buffeting us to make it very difficult for us to move to a position where we are sustainable. But there is fantastic work going on, and I would echo everything that Jan has said around the fact that Andy and his team and all of our staff are doing absolutely everything they can to ensure that our costs are kept to an absolute minimum. And the absolutely best news of this is that the amount of money that we're currently projecting we will need to draw from our reserves at the end of the year has halved. And the longer that we can maintain our reserves whole, and indeed if we ever get to a position if this council continues beyond the next 2 or 3 years where we are able to pay back into them, that is why those reserves are there, to help us through moments like this. And we need to show our gratitude, I think, to all of the staff of this council who've done the very best they can to ensure that we get to that position. So the recommendations that we have are on page 397 and in paragraphs 3, 4, 5 and 6, all of those in favour of accepting those recommendations. So that's carried. So Andy, from the positive to the possibly not quite so positive news.
Thank you, Leader Cabinet. So yeah, this next report is the medium-term financial strategy update. So apologies, it's a bit of a weighty tone, so I shall try and pick out the key points. So the purpose of the report is to update on the MTFS strategy and forecast for the next 2 financial years, taking account of both the in-year position, which we've just discussed, and then importantly that projection of funding, demand and cost pressures. I think importantly there's some things that we don't know, and we've mentioned some of those already, but the in-year budget setting for next year is still in progress, so that will continue to develop, and that may impact the final kind of budgets that feed through. We've not got the local government finance policy announcement yet. We do expect that next week, and that may give an indication of some of the changes ahead. We've not got the detailed funding announcement, and we don't expect that until probably the 3rd week of December, which is kind of the usual timing. And I've also, in the previous item, mentioned that we still don't have the government's review and publication of the white paper on SEN, which is clearly a key issue. So if I just pull out some of the key points. In terms of 26-27, the overall forecast is broadly in line with what we brought to Cabinet in February. So we reported a forecast gap in February of 136, and that has crept up to 143 in this updated iteration. In terms of that movement, some big ups and some big downs. I'll just run through some of those key items. So there's a £10 million increase from where we were for non-pay inflation. And I guess that reflects 2 things, both the general level of inflation being higher than anticipated, but also that feeding through impact of the national living wage and the employer's national insurance fully feeding through to budgets in 26-27 on the back of this year. There's an increase in the adults pressure, as we just discussed, 13.9 million in next year. Conversely, a reduction in the children's services growth, 13.3, and primarily the children's reduction is due to that really good work ongoing in managing that school transport. So lower growth than forecast, which is really good, but also a lot of work around lowering that cost of delivery. There's a big impact from the forecast reduction as a result of the fair funding review. As I say, we don't know the outcome, but the modelling undertaken by Pixel on behalf of CCN, we've got an overall forecast reduction of 48 million after 3 years in transition, but the impact in next year is forecast to be a reduction in funding of just shy of 16 million. And on the positive side, to the triennial valuation of pensions, which will start from next year, the impact, there's an £8.5 million reduction in the employer's pension contributions. So that's very much 26-27, that 143. We've then looked forward to 27-28, and you won't be surprised to learn that the gap is forecast to be higher in that following year, as set out in section H. Very indicative high level, but that forecast is 230 million, for 27-28. Some other key items in the report, just to note the leader's letter to the ministers attached as Appendix 1. That highlights a number of issues, highlights our overall financial position, highlights our structural deficit due to that council tax position, but it also talks around ideas around EFS going forward and where the government could help fully apply their thinking to EFS and how it's allocated and how it's used. The report covers in section J and K a whole range of mitigating actions to address that budget shortfall for next year. They range across the legislative change that the government could put in place, further efficiencies, savings, further transformation, increased income, and then exceptional finance support, discussions with the government, and failing that, there is the option of a council tax referendum. So all those options are covered within the report. And it also sets out that if all those mitigating actions don't close the budget gap sufficiently, we still do have the option of withdrawal from the BBR. It's not the recommended approach, but it is the kind of approach of last resort to set that budget. So just pick out some from the summary, so paragraphs 24 to 26. At the moment, based on despite the control on spending and demand pressures and the significant savings that we've already talked about, the council still faces an ongoing unsustainable financial position. We've requested significant changes, so we've requested an increase in government funding, we've requested the ability to raise council tax above referendum levels, and we've requested legislative change. If none of those things come to fruition, it's clear that the council is currently unable to deliver a sustainable balanced budget from our current resources for either 26-27 or 27-28. Although the important caveat I set out in paragraph 26 in terms of that reassuring piece is that if all those mitigating actions we can't balance the budget, I'm confident that there will be sufficient money in reserves to be able to set a balanced budget, albeit, as I said, that wouldn't be the preferred or recommended approach. Few other issues we note in the report in paragraph 47. It's one of the recommendations to note that both the Chief Exec, Gary, and myself will continue our engagement with MHCLG. We've had recent discussions in September on the back of last year's EFS application. I suspect we'll write again on the back of this MTFS, and we'll still continue to talk to them around the potential for EFS and particularly that option of raising council tax by an amount above the referendum limit to bring back as an option for you. And paragraph 48 just sets out that we will, for the first time for Hampshire, set out a flexible use of capital receipts strategy. That's been an option for a number of years, but the strength of our reserves up until this point has probably meant that we didn't need to look through as that as an option. But as our options narrow, as we spend reserves in support of the budget, that flexible use of capital receipts means that we can fund items that ordinarily would be revenue items. We can use capital receipts to plug some of that gap, and some of that could be investment in transformation, and particularly, I know you'd be interested in that you could pump prime that work around prevention, which would be a significant part of the strategy going forward to reduce that overall demand. And I was going to pause there, Leader.
Andy, thanks so much. So Jan, do you want to introduce it from a cabinet perspective?
Yes, please. Thank you, Andy, and thank you for this most detailed report. I think on a slightly positive note, it's important to recognise since 2008 this council has delivered more than £734 million worth of savings against its budget, which is a huge figure, including the 32 million we've obviously saved in this second quarter of this year. So that's a stark reminder. Much of the pressure we are under stems from national factors that are outside of our local control, including, as we know, outdated legislation and an inequitable funding system. So we await the government's review on adult social care, the Casey report, and also the SEND provision, which, as you say, was delayed until January next year. Hampshire also receives comparatively low allocations through mechanisms such as the Better Care Fund within the health service and the pupil funding formula within schools, despite our high levels of SEND demand and the added cost of serving such a large semi-rural area. I think one of the best parts of this report is section J, which starts on page 446, and that outlines the mitigating actions that we have employed or are employing to close this gap. And some of these are within our control, but most sadly are not. But it highlights the work we've done following the recommendations from the expert panel, as I referenced earlier, where we've delivered targeted efficiency savings while maintaining an excellent standard of quality, in fact, an outstanding standard. It outlines our options around work in prevention and transformation, particularly in the high spend areas of adult social care and children's services, that we use our reserves and flexible capital strategies to maintain short-term pressures. So we will continue to press for fairer national funding, and you'll see that outlined in Nick's letter in Appendix 1, for legislative change around school transport provision, better care fund settlements within the NHS, and ideally 2-year settlements from government to reflect our local needs and costs. Thank you.
Jan, thanks very much. So questions and comments, everybody. Steve.
Thank you, Leader. And thank you for the report and Jan for that intro. There's an assumption in the report that we'll lose the government grant, many millions, as a result of the Fair Funding Review version 2 consultation. That consultation, I think, ended on the 15th of August. How certain is that assumption? And when are we likely to have confirmation? Because it's already been a long time since the consultation closed.
So it's not certain that will be the outcome, Steve, but it's the best working assumption that we have at the moment. There wasn't authority by authority detail set out in the Fair Funding Review, but what CCN did was they worked with Pixel Consulting, and Pixel were able to provide a forecast position for each of the county council and the county council network, and based on their detailed work and their detailed modelling, that's how we arrived at that assumption. But I guess it's important to note a couple of things. So since the consultation was launched and now there's been a change in the local government minister, so sometimes that can play into how a consultation may work out in the end. So there's talk that there'll be maybe some changes around London and the impact on London authorities. So we'll wait to see how that plays out, but that may not be positive from our perspective. I was on a call last week and the general message from MHCLG was, whilst there are some changes, broadly speaking, they anticipate the impact on county councils to be as reported. So from our position, well, across the pieces mix, so some county councils do quite well from the funding review too, and some, like ourselves and Surrey, do quite badly. So if that's the broad outcome that isn't changing, my working assumption will be that we will be in a negative position on our funding. It's just the extent and how firm is that 48 over the 3 years. So a long protracted answer, but hopefully that helps.
Sorry, Stephen.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions and possibly a political point to make after it, depending on the questions. Assuming that the council tax remains at 5%, how confident are you that the council will be able to set a balanced budget for 26-27?
So if the current MPS forecast remains at that 143 as we work through to February, as set in the report, there are a lot of mitigating actions that we'll put in place, so further savings, efficiency, transformation, etc. All of those will help to reduce the overall budget gap. But the important point, as I set out in the summary, is given our reserves position, whilst it wouldn't be my preferred approach as CFO, I'm confident as a council we can set the budget through a further draw from that budget bridging reserve. That's been a well thought out long-term strategy though, in terms of making sure we set sufficient funding aside in the budget bridging reserve. And you note, for example, in this report, we've done a further review of the capital programme, where we've either got schemes that have ceased that had some spare funding left, or schemes that no longer need to are a priority. So we continue that work to not spend money where we don't need to, and that helps bolster that budget bridging reserve. So through that draw, yes, confident, but it wouldn't be my preferred approach. And I think through Gary and the Chief Officer Management team, our focus remains on all the other mitigating actions first, before we would come to budget bridging reserve.
Thank you. Let me paraphrase that in my understanding, therefore. I think what you're saying is that we can get through 26/27 by calling on our reserves, but it's the last time we can do it because they'll be all used up.
Yeah, set out in section N, if that 230 forecast holds for 27-28, and we do have that significant draw to support next year's budget, then it's looking that the reserves will be insufficient in 27-28 to cover that size of budget gap.
Thank you. Now, how typical are we in expecting to go to the 5% cap limit, if indeed 5% it is?
So you do hear the odd exception being mentioned where councils may not go to 5%, but I think over the last couple of years most upper tier authorities have gone for 5%, and that would be my expectation as we look towards next year.
Yeah, thank you. Now here's the political point on which I wouldn't expect the officers to comment, but the government has set us statutory requirements on which we must spend money, and it is our duty to do that. It is also set a cap on how much council tax we can raise, and in common with many other councils, we are virtually obliged to go up to that limit to balance the books. What that means, therefore, to me, is that local councillors no longer set the council tax. It's government that does it. They tell us what we've got to spend the money on, they tell us how much we can raise, and we haven't really got any choice but to do what they say. So it's been a fundamental change that has happened over many years. So this isn't a party political point, but it's happened over many years that the reserves have been squeezed out of the councils, and in effect, the person who sets our council tax is the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
I won't expect Andy to comment on that one, but I think it's a very fair point, Stephen. Cabinet colleagues, any other comments or points that I'd like to make? Select committee chairs, anything anyone would like to add? No? All okay? A quick sum up from me, which is to thank Andy for the report. I think we shouldn't underestimate the fact that there was a point, I would say, about a year to 18 months ago where there was a much more pessimistic outlook for us, and it is again down to the hard work of everybody, to the fact that we are at least able to look ahead and say that we have some certainty for this year and for next, and I'm not sure that we would have been so certain that that was going to be the outcome if we were talking a year to 18 months ago. That said, what's really frustrating is that all of the good news that we were talking about in the Q2 financial outturn a few minutes ago is undone in this, and it's undone through impacts that are outside our control, and as Stephen says, are in large part due to the decisions that the government has made. It's the government who've decided to put up employers' national insurance, and that has had an impact both on the costs that we have to pay and negotiate with our suppliers because their costs have gone up. It is the government that has not kept control of inflation, and it's gone back up again to a point that is higher than we anticipated, just short of 4%. It is the government who are changing the fair funding formula, and next year taking 16 million from us, and the year after it'll be 32, and the year after that it's expected to be 48. For us and for the councils that succeed us, there are still huge challenges ahead in being able to provide the services that we quite rightly deliver for the people of Hampshire. And we would all like to provide services that are wider ranging and more comprehensive than we currently are able. We deliver services now that are effectively down to their statutory minimum. And as Stephen has very rightly pointed out, we are then in a position where we are told by how much we can put up council tax. And I mentioned earlier on today that we need to be completely truthful with the people of Hampshire, and I will be. The outcome of council tax will be that we will have to increase it by the maximum we are allowed, because that is the only way by which we can ensure that our services continue to be funded and we continue to look after the most vulnerable people in our community, that we continue to look after the roads and ensure that they are maintained to an acceptable standard, and that we continue to provide the care for the heritage that is part of our legacy. And the easiest way I can explain that to people is to say that in this year we anticipate that the cost to us of paying for additional people in care homes who begin to ask us to support them is anticipated to be a net increase in our budget of £18.7 million. The amount of money we are allowed by the government to add to council tax to cover for social care this year has raised £16.4 million. So we're already £2.3 million behind the curve before we think about any other kind of care for adults whatsoever. And that is the constant challenge that we have. And that is why we are playing our part. The people of Hampshire will be paying their part by paying their council tax month on month and paying the council tax that will no doubt have to increase in April when we set the budget in February. And so it is time for the government to step up and look at the various different things that they can do to bring forward change. And they have kicked the can down the road over social care. And I understand now that Baroness Casey is being taken away from that to go and do something else, so that no doubt will delay any solution there even further. They need to support us with SEND, and again, as Steve has rightly pointed out, they've kicked the can down the road by delaying the new act that will support us there. And I fear very much that the decisions made in the budget on the 26th of November might well even make things tougher for us again. But our staff work incredibly hard to continue to deliver these services under huge pressure, and we have done absolutely everything we can to improve our financial situation. And the fact that we are not talking about a Section 114 so far this year is, I think, a testament to everybody for the incredibly hard work that we've carried out. So the recommendations are on pages 417 and 418 because there are so many of them. They are in paragraphs 3 to 11, all of those in favour. So that's carried as well. Andy, thank you so much to you and to Catherine and to your teams for all of the work that you are doing on this. And we'll no doubt be talking again in the next couple of cabinet meetings and at council in February about how we then manage next year. Are we all okay to keep plugging on? We've got a few more items, but hopefully they, whilst as meaty, are not going to take quite so much debate. So, or possibly loads of debate, and we'll be here all afternoon. Sorry, Simon. Public Health Strategy Annual Update. Welcome, Simon.
Many thanks, Leader and Cabinet colleagues. Just introduce my colleague, Joe Jeffries, Associate Director of Public Health. So this paper sets out the annual update of the Public Health Strategy, which has been recently through health scrutiny with Councillor Withers. The Public Health function is uniquely funded with a ring-fence grant for prevention of ill health, and this paper sets out the work we've done over the past year, recognising that we are seeing more people experiencing ill health despite some of the successes we've had in reducing smoking prevalence. But we are seeing things like rising obesity and other risk factors. This year we've really strengthened our partnership, working both within the council across the directorates, and those other reports you've heard this morning really reflect some of the work we are doing. We have really worked with the NHS, district and many other partners, and our work is shaped by the JSNA, but also the insight work we do with our residents in their communities to understand their needs to change behaviour, and we see that in the way we communicate and the difference that has made. We continue to monitor outputs and outcomes and innovate based on population health needs. Going forward, we'll be refreshing the strategy in a light touch way, ready for the future. I'll hand over to Joe, who's going to give some really specific examples of what we've achieved this year.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to pull out a couple of examples from each of the themes of our strategy. So I'll start with our Healthy Places theme. This theme is showcases some of the work that we've done to deliver the shared health, economy, environment and transport agenda. So we, within the team, have an innovative planning statement. We work really closely with the local planning authorities in our districts and boroughs, and we've contributed to planning applications for a number of developments. 23 different planning applications have had input from the public health team. We've contributed to 7 neighbourhood plans. We've also contributed to the local nature recovery plan, as you heard today. We've worked with others to deliver an innovative healthy streets training to 5 of our National Planning Authority colleagues, and worked internally to share that training across this organisation. And we now have 3 trainers within our team so that we can cascade that training more widely. We've also contributed to local cycling, walking and infrastructure plans, to the local transport plan 4, and as showcased in the local nature recovery strategy paper today, developed some sensory walks across the county. Moving on to the healthy lives theme, one of our key challenges locally, nationally and around the world is rising obesity, rising numbers of obese and overweight children and adults. We've taken a system approach to tackling obesity, working with partners in a number of our most deprived neighbourhoods, working really strongly with our district and borough partners. That involves working with a whole range of stakeholders, working closely with residents and the voluntary and community sector. As Simon mentioned, smoking, whilst nationally and locally rates have continued to decrease, with the smoking ban being one of the most impactful public health policies that's have been implemented, we are still now at a point where we've got the most difficult challenge ahead. So we are particularly focusing on some of the groups that have been, that maybe require more effort and more understanding of their individual barriers to help them give up smoking, focusing on routine and manual workers. Over the last couple of years has enabled us to reduce the prevalence from 21% to 16% among that group. We have been in receipt of additional funding, which has enabled us to work with a whole range of partners to really increase uptake of supported smoking cessation services within our commission service. And we have now enabled over 3,500 people to quit smoking over the last year. Just one more example from our Healthy People theme, which is really the theme about keeping people safe. So this is some of our health protection work and emergency planning. We continue to work really closely with our NHS colleagues, both commissioners and providers, to increase uptake of vaccinations. Our flu COVID boosters in the spring, we were the highest uptake of that particular vaccination in the southeast region. And most recently on our emergency planning, public health emergency planning, a number of people from our team as well as others in the council have engaged in a national pandemic planning exercise. The work that we do across the team is underpinned by a number of different approaches that we take broadly across the team. We work, as Simon says, very closely with our colleagues in the Insight team to deliver alongside a number of community researchers who've been working with since the days of the pandemic from Black and ethnic minority communities across Hampshire, and we've worked with them on over 20 now different challenges to really understand barriers and enablers for very different types of public health intervention. We also draw heavily on behavioural science to design our interventions, and particularly have used that effectively in redesigning some of our social marketing campaigns. I think that will be enough for now.
Joe, thank you very much. Great presentation. That's incredible. So in our target audience, we've reduced smoking prevalence by 25% effectively. Pretty much, yeah. Stephen, did you want to introduce this from a cabinet perspective?
Yes, thank you very much. This is a very positive report, but it's a starting point. The public health strategy really puts down what we look to do. The trick is turning it into beneficial outcomes. And I don't know how many people noticed, but I did. Joe was constantly saying, working with partners on obesity, working with partners on smoking cessation, health protection, working with the black and ethnic minority communities, and so on. Because to get everybody pulling in the same direction on the targets that are contained within this report is the key to success. So this isn't a finishing point, this report, it's a starting point. And by approving it, we give the officers our blessing to continue to do the good work that they are doing. I was very pleased that in the introduction from the officers, we heard about the Healthy Places theme. It's one of the things that concerns me, and there's a whole paragraph on it at paragraph 18. The local planning authorities have been put under tremendous pressure by the government to deliver numbers. And the thing that can be sacrificed when you go for quantity is quality. And we, as a county council, with that Healthy Places theme, may be the last port of call for defending the interests of the people who are going to live in the new housing developments and on the new estates. And I predict that that's going to become a theme of increasing importance to us, and where the County Council is going to have a major role to play in protecting the futures of the people of Hampshire. So it's a very positive report, it's a starting point, and I commend it to the Cabinet.
Super, thanks so much. So questions, comments, Ros?
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for the report today. So we've been hearing a lot about neighbourhood working, and you mentioned about the black and ethnic minority groups that you have been working with as well. So can you please describe how public health works and listens to the different communities to improve their health, please?
Councillor Chad, that's really helpful. I think you're right. Neighbourhood working is not new to us. We work in our neighbourhoods. You all represent different neighbourhoods, and that's really, really important. I think the NHS has caught up and realises working with neighbourhoods is the right thing to do. We're really mostly on this agenda working with people in their communities, and improving health takes place where people live, work and reside and socialise. So we've done a lot of work. Councillor Reid and I went up to Basingstoke where they were focusing on suicide prevention. As Joe mentioned, we're doing some work on systems approach to obesity with communities, understanding their needs and listening to them, and that helps change behaviour. It's not without challenge, as Stuart will talk about. We've got family hubs work in our neighbourhoods, so there's lots of different policy work we need to bring together, how we listen to our communities, and then move that forward. Joe, I don't know if there's anything more you want to say about kind of community researchers?
Yeah, so working with the community researchers, as I said, was a programme that we started during the COVID pandemic. We were unsuccessful in gaining some funding from the NHS to set that up at that time, and decided that we would use the public health grant and some of the COMP funding, for those of you who remember that, to set that up. It's been a really interesting and eventful and really valuable journey for us in the public health team. And some of those researchers have been with us that whole time. Others have joined more recently. So we've had a couple of people from the Ukrainian community join, as more people from the Ukraine have come across to live in our county. For example, we have worked with that group on a number of different challenges. We've worked with them on issues such as young people's mental health. We've worked with them on issues that are closer to my own portfolio around sexual and reproductive health, some really sensitive issues. We've had a lot of support from our colleagues in the Insight team, as I said, who have helped us set up the ways of working. And we are now moving that programme forward to enable those researchers, if they wish, to receive some further training in more formal research methods. And we're working a bit more closely with them, taking them along the journey so that they can have more input into the development of interventions that are based on some of the insight that they've brought us, and understanding as their confidence has grown, we are able to explore more more topics. And we're at the point now where we're working with that group to surface and identify topics that they are hearing about when they're having these conversations with their communities, and work with them to align that kind of bottom-up need around health and wellbeing into the development of our refresh strategy.
Yeah, do.
Thank you. That all sounds really, really amazing. And I think one of the things going forward, if we can, is make sure that we have that fully joined up approach within the council and the different areas that we all have responsibility for. Because as you've said, your communities come are all very different, and actually what we want to do is serve those communities in the best possible way, be that through community hubs within children's neighbourhood, hubs within the NHS. So it's about that, just making sure that we've got it right for residents and they don't have multiple stops to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, there's something in that within the council, and also with other partners around the system who are also using similar models of insight and kind of co-development work. We're going to be attending the Integrated Care Partnership Research Assembly later this month. We'll be talking a little bit about the community researchers' work there, but in addition, listening to other partners who have also got very similar sorts of approaches, in the hope that we can, have a more holistic approach.
Super, thanks. Zoe.
It's just a comment, leader, really. A really excellent strategy, and I think it is very collaborative, and that's important to see within that. I just want to note that the detail of some of the co-benefits and that holistic working that you're doing. And I think when we talk about public health, it's really important that we understand that ripple effect, that co-benefit, and how we work in harmony together, either across directorates here or in the wider neighbourhood. And it was really good to see some of those co-benefits highlighted, such as access to our green and blue spaces, the nature recovery strategy, good air quality, and building in resilience to such things such as heat stress with the climate changes. And I know we've just had the Year of Health, and as chair of the Climate Change Forum, I just want to recognise their contribution and their work that the forum did within that. I think it's also really important, some of that co-benefit is the importance of public health on our economy, skills, and the integrated strategies such as Get Hampshire Working. So I just wanted to recognise that. Thank you.
Thanks. I think we should just let Bill come in, actually, if he wanted to say a few words from the Select Committee perspective.
Thank you, Leader. The House thoroughly endorsed this report, and Simon works and his officers work very closely with all of us, and we've seen the enhancement come about working, and the communities. I mean, one of the things I really love about the co-production that goes on is what we're doing in our libraries with our communities, and not only with the normal residents, but also the Asian and Nepalese communities as well, who are using the benefit of what's happening. Well, one of my concerns is, with the obesity in children, is how many people aren't attending school, and actually whether or not we're getting the message across to them through Insight to find out exactly, how many and what are their needs. But that's a minor part compared to all the good things that are coming out by the team and the officers through the co-production. And Simon's produced a very good PowerPoint slide of all the neighbourhood working with the district councils that this council does, which I think maybe all the cabinet should see.
Super. Thanks very much. Any other comments, everybody? No. So we've got recommendations on page 473, paragraph 2, A, B, C, and D. I'll just say it's really thank you for that presentation, both Joe and Simon. Joe in particular, that's all that knowledge is really impressive, and particularly thanks to help with neighbourhood plans, because I know a couple have been in my patch, and they've worked really, really well. So all of those in favour of the recommendations. Thank you. That's it. Thanks so much for that. Now, I have had a request for a 5-minute comfort break. So if that's okay, can we pause for 5 minutes and then everyone can just run out if they need to? So welcome back, everybody, and a particular thank you to the officers for bearing with us, as this is quite a long cabinet meeting. But our next item is particularly important as well, and it's it is so important I've lost it. The Adults Health and Care Directorate 5-year strategy, Year 2 progress update. Jess.
Thank you very much, Leader. In the interests of time, I will move through the report quite quickly. This is an annual update to Cabinet on the Adults Health and Care Strategy. As you say, the vision is to help people to live healthy lives with maximum independence. The strategy was first published in 2023, and we are 2 years into that strategy. The report demonstrates that we continue to make excellent progress through delivering on our priorities, which are prevention, aligned with the report you've just heard from Simon, promoting independent living, and then also supporting people who require accommodation and long-term care. It's important to emphasise the continuing challenging context, demographic changes, increases in the number of people over 85 years old in Hampshire, including those people who are self-funding their care, increased complexity of need, particularly in young adults, growth in the market, and alongside that, a 45% increase in the number of safeguarding referrals received last year. It's also important to note that Adults Health and Care have continued to engage with staff and external partners in the development of a self-assessment in preparation for CQC assessment of adult social care. CQC have joined us by coincidence on site today, and they'll be assessing how well Hampshire's adult social care functions meet their statutory duties under Part 1 of the Care Act. And with that in mind, the report is structured in line with the CQC domains. So an area of the report I think you'll be particularly interested in is the description of our strong preventative features that we've retained, that close working with public health around the Live Longer Better framework, which includes, of course, steady and strong classes and supporting falls prevention and continence alongside the family plan, which supports family to support older adults in managing their health and well-being. The County Council has award-winning partnership for the provision of technology, and I'd remiss to not mention that, which continues to support over 40,000 residents each year. And we are one of the minority of authorities that continue to provide nutritional support and welfare checks via a hot meal provider called Hills. Our information and advice has gone from strength to strength, with a 27% increase in the use of that this year, and 150 people who draw on care and support supporting its improvement. There's also a county-wide carers support service with 6,000 new referrals this year, new carers respite beds, new technology to support carers' needs, and that's particularly important for people looking after their loved ones. Community wellbeing workers are also provided by the voluntary sector. The county also continues to provide excellent oversight over the provider market, with CQC rating of good and outstanding in 83% of the care homes that it commissions, which in comparison to other local authorities is excellent. National benchmarking shows that we have had a 30% reduction in the use of residential care for people under 65 years with an active supported living strategy. And the Council has also continued to bring forward extra care schemes for older adults with 21 schemes across the county. Hampshire continued to be a trailblazer in this regard. Another area where such services provide better outcomes but are also less expensive. And it's important to say 20,000 people last year were supported to leave hospital, receiving direct support from the council with a range of services that maximise independence, such as the rapid support service, reablement and short stay beds. With regard to safety in the system, and as part of the Hampshire Safeguarding Adults Board, the council and partners have continued to promote awareness and understanding of abuse and neglect in communities, including hard to reach communities. And please look out for our campaign in Safeguarding Week next week. It's important to flag that safeguarding demand has increased, and it's also important to flag that there have been significant increases in the number of people who self-neglect and therefore are at risk from a safeguarding perspective. The Council have worked closely with the voluntary sector to respond to this group, and this service has received excellent feedback. A really good example of how we continue to learn and improve services in response to Safeguarding Adults reviews. As you can hear, there are far too many aspects of progress to describe here today, but I hope that my description has given you an insight into the nature of the work completed this year. Thank you.
Jess, thank you so much. Liz, did you want to give a quick introduction from a Cabinet perspective?
Yes, can I just say, first of all, thank you, Jess. I think adult services is moving forward, and what I'd like to do, and please don't think we're not aware of the problems we face financially, but I actually also think it's time to shine in a way because of the good things we're doing. And I'd like to highlight two of those, if I may. Our tech officer, which technology-enabled care, which Jess referred to, and how many people, 40,000 a year, get that, and it saves us 2.14 million a year. No, it's 2.4, sorry. But as well as saving us that money, what it does is it helps people. And it gives people back some independence, some control over their lives. And actually that's very important. I remember when we were the first to introduce the Alexa, and it went to one of our residents who was actually stuck in her wheelchair. She had no mobility. She couldn't be left, and suddenly her partner could go out because if anything happened, she could voice control him, get him on the phone. But the best thing for her was that she said to me, I can tell Alexa to play Barry Manilow. My partner doesn't like Barry Manilow, but I can have him whenever I'm ready. And it's giving that sort of ability to people that makes a real difference. And the other thing I'm very pleased about is the 30% reduction in putting younger adults with disabilities into nursing in residential homes. They go into our supported living and suddenly they have independence, they have control over their lives. They're not being told, they're not being organised. It's their choice what they do. And I think every time we have to make savings, we also look at what we can do to enhance people's lives. And I think we've been very successful over the last 2-3 years at that, would you say, Jess? We have made a real difference to a lot of people. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Liz. Questions, comments, everybody? Kirsty.
Thank you. Just a quick one to build on what Liz was saying about the award-winning partnership with Technology-Enabled Care. And I appreciate that's been one of our strengths for many years, but because tech is continually evolving, how are we ensuring that we remain at the forefront of that to keep that innovation benefiting our residents?
Thank you very much. And I would refer you to paragraph 58 and 59 of the report. Particularly, we are at the forefront at the moment of things to support people with learning disabilities where they are not happening in any other local authority. So, for example, Brain in Hand is used by over 50 people to support them to manage their anxieties and build coping strategies. We're also using something called Memorables to support people with daily reminders. And there's something called Alexa Vocala, which is being trialled in younger adult supported living accommodation. And it not only supports quality of life, but reduces the need for formal care and support and promotes safety. So all of those things are not happening anywhere else in the country at the moment as a result of that sustained progress. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Any other comments? Stephen?
This is a comment rather than a question. Meals on Wheels. Jess's team arranged for me to go out and go on a round last week. And it was fascinating because it is more than just delivering food. And we called on one lady and the deliverer of the food was, he knew her, he knew what she was like. He found her lying on her bed, she seemed a bit confused, and her medication was still out, hadn't been taken. And he said, I'm going to call this one in because I'm concerned. And I don't know the outcome, but the relevant carers were going to be informed, the relatives were going to be informed that perhaps she wasn't as well as she should be that day. And it was a real practical way of looking after somebody who was vulnerable, and as the report says, perhaps stop them developing into a crisis and going into hospital. So we're one of the few counties that continue to run Meals on Wheels. So I think we should give Jess and her team a metaphorical pat on the back on that one.
Definitely. I thought you were going to say you were starting receiving Meals on Wheels there for a minute. Cabinet colleagues, any other comments? No. Select committee chairs, anything to add, Bill?
Leader, I'd just like to say this is an outstanding report, and the work that is done in this directorate, is way above our other areas in the southeast. And as Liz said about the IT Vocala, I mean, what a godsend for our residents and young adults. And a quote that was given me yesterday was, our directorate saves in the right way and brings in innovation and good practice constantly throughout the year. And we've seen that in this report. They don't stand still. Despite savings, they're moving forward all the time. And the co-production with other agencies within the council has been outstanding, and the districts.
Thanks so much. So the recommendations that we have are on page 493 in paragraph 2. And essentially what we're doing is noting the report and all of the brilliant work that Jess and her team have done. This is the one part of this part of the council where the number of people we help, the budget that we have to attribute to it, is only limited by those who qualify for our assistance. And so Jess, your team does a fantastic job, both in providing excellent care, and I very much hope the inspection that we're underway at the minute will confirm that, but also in managing demand that it seems to be ever increasing. And I think it's very much the case that the number of older people in the county continues to increase, and we have a number of older people that we look after that is greater than the national average, and so that is one of the pressures under which we find ourselves. All of those in favour of accepting the recommendations? And that's carried. Jess, thank you so much. I'll let you, you've got much better things to do, not better, busier things to do than being here, so good luck this afternoon. Steph and Stuart, I am so sorry that we have kept you waiting so long. So we're now on to item 13, which is the annual complaints report and local government and social care ombudsman determinations for the last financial year.
Thank you, Leader. This is the first joint annual report of the Director of People and Organisation and the Monitoring Officer on the operation of the County Council's complaint process. Following scrutiny by Select Committee earlier in October, the report is now being presented for consideration by Cabinet today. You may recall in the past we've presented a report on the determinations made by the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman in relation to complaints received by the Ombudsman previously as part of the annual performance report, but also more recently as a standalone report of the Monitoring Officer. The report in front of you today is expanded to cover the broader operation of the County Council's complaint process, including those determinations. As I said, this is the first of such reports, so as we develop moving forward, we'll take on board any feedback from the Select Committee that we heard, but also discussion from today. Stu, I'm going to hand over to, who's our Head of Organisational Resilience. As you know, will summarise the main points of the report for you, and then we'll take any questions that you have.
Thanks, Steph, and good afternoon, Cabinet. This report is structured in line with the elements recommended by the LGSCO in their complaints code, and it deals with the operation of the County Council's corporate complaints process. It should be said, though, there are other regulatory and legal complaints and redress processes, for example, statutory complaints relating to social care in children's and adults, or other regulatory frameworks such as the Information Commissioner's Office and civil claims. These fall outside the remit of the County Council's complaint policy and are not covered in this report. Annual reports on the statutory complaints process relating to these complaints settings have their own reporting governance structures and are scrutinised by their own respective select committees. On to the report itself. The County Council made a major change in 24-25 to how it handled complaints from the public. It reduced the number of stages in its complaints process from 3 to 2. These changes were supported by increased training to staff and improving the quality and responsiveness of the responses. Complaints are handled by the service directorate responsible for that service, with a small corporate team responsible for the complaints policy and liaison with the Ombudsman. The statistics provided in the report provide a baseline against which future reports can compare our performance now. So 77% of complaints received at the first stage are responded to within 10 days, and 69% of stage 2 complaints are responded to within a further 20 days. The figures show a decrease in timeliness of stage 1 complaints from 89% in 23-24 to 77% in 24-25. This is largely due to a 19.6% increase in the number of stage 1 complaints from 1,488 to 1,781, but an improvement in the timeliness of handling of stage 2 complaints from 35% to 69% in the same time period. As the report states in paragraph 23, the reduction in stage 2 complaints alongside improved compliance suggests that more complaints are being resolved effectively at the initial stage, reducing the need for escalation and use of more senior officer time. The report also outlines the operation of the County Council's arrangements for handling unreasonable customers, and members will see in paragraphs 34 to 38 that since the introduction of the new approach, a total of 25 restrictions have been put in place. These are instances where the County Council restricts its contact with an individual to particular means of communication or a correspondence address, for example, responding to the individual by email alone via a shared email address. The final part of the report outlines the findings of the annual letter from the Ombudsman and the determinations made by the Ombudsman in relation to complaints received about Hampshire County Council. It's important to note that the number of complaints are within the context of hundreds of interactions with the public that the Council makes every day. The number of complaints that the Ombudsman investigates relating to the County Council has remained at a consistent level over the last 2 years, with the same level of determinations found at paragraph 50. A comparison with other comparable county councils in the South East shows a lower level of complaints relating to Hampshire. So I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Stuart, thanks so much. Questions, comments, anybody? Kirsty?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, just a quick one. I noticed on page 530 the table on the comparisons with other comparable councils, and we obviously look quite favourably in that table. So what is your reading of that? Why do you think that is the case?
Thank you. So yeah, the LGSCO publishes data on all local authorities on its website. And as you said, section 53 of the report shows that comparable data with county councils in the South East, Essex, Surrey and Kent. So we've used these as comparators in previous reports, being similar in geography, demographics and services provided. The figures indicate that the Ombudsman investigates fewer complaints about Hampshire County Council than those other comparative county councils in the South East. Looking at the numbers of complaints upheld against the council, this was 30, 79% were upheld. The average for comparable councils is 89%. So the LGSEO also provides figures adjusted for population, and the Ombudsman upheld 2.1 cases per 100,000 population in Hampshire, against an average of 5.3 upheld decisions per 100,000 residents in other, as an average in other councils.
Super, thanks. So good news there. Any other comments, Stephen?
This is a left ball one, but we've resolved a number of complaints. We've had investigations, we've marked them as dealt with, and so on. So that's from our perspective. Do we have any feedback on what the complainant's perspective is as to whether they feel they have been treated justly and they've had their voice heard?
I think the answer probably is we don't have that information, if I'm honest with you. Generally speaking, once they've gone through the complaints policy process and they've gone through each stage of that, the next matter for recourse will be the LGSEO directly. So that's when we get into the space of them considering whether they're going to explore those or and uphold them or not. So the only way in which we can measure if people are satisfied with the outcome of their complaint really is through the level of further complaints that are made through to the LGSEO. So we don't follow up on a complaint to then determine whether or not they are satisfied with the outcome. So we don't have that data.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a fair answer, and that brings into highlight, therefore, to keep the number of official complaints down and to resolve any issues that might be arising before it gets to the trench digging level.
Could I just come back? Sorry, absolutely. And I think that's where our focus is in ensuring that we have a higher number of complaints being resolved at that first stage. And we're seeing that we're getting less coming through into a second stage, which would also, of course, be an indication that people are content with the outcome of their complaint.
Super, thanks. Any other comments, questions? Select committee chairs? No? So we are asked to accept the recommendations on pages 523 in paragraphs 2 to 6. Is everybody in favour? All those in favour? Great, thank you, agreed. Thank you so much for the report and all the work that we do. And it's, I guess one of the answers would be if your complaint is upheld, you're probably happy. If your complaint is not upheld, you're probably not. So that's probably the answer. Item 14, last public item, is the annual corporate risk management report again. Steph and Stuart.
Thank you. So a short introduction from myself again, and then I'll pass over to Stu. So this is our annual report to Cabinet on the corporate risk management arrangements. It's a key milestone in our annual risk management governance arrangements and procedures, and it aims to provide you as a Cabinet with assurance and oversight that both corporate and emerging directorate risks are being identified and managed, and that mitigation measures are in place and aligned with the Council's priorities. The report today also includes our newly proposed risk management and insurance strategies that can be found at Appendix A and B. As part of the Constitution, Cabinet are responsible for approving those strategies, hence why we bring them to you today. And then just for awareness, we will be taking a risk management report on to the Audit Committee in the new year. The Audit Committee are responsible for the monitoring of the overall effective development and operation of risk management in the County Council. So we provide them with a report to enable them to support them to fulfil that role. I'll now hand over to Stu and he'll take us through the main points of the report.
Okay, so firstly, to summarise our overall position in risk management as an organisation, our governance procedures, we believe, continue to deliver effective risk management. We have well-established risk management groups with clear roles and responsibilities, and an example of that can be found at Appendix C of the paper, and a clear escalation procedure from service-level operational risks all the way up to CMT and Cabinet, and you can see that governance structure provided at Appendix D. Our opinion in this space has also been validated by 2 audits in 2025, one internal and one external, both of which found our risk management processes to have well managed or very good, in the case of the external Zurich Risk Health Check, or to have reasonable levels of assurance in case of the internal Southern Audit Partnership. Secondly, we're presenting to you today a revised risk management strategy. So the previous 3-year strategy was implemented in 2022, and this year therefore is due for revision. This new strategy explains very clearly what our priorities are and how we will integrate risk management practice into our existing processes. This next 3-year strategy cycle takes us out to 2028, and so is conveniently timed to take us to the conclusion of LGR and succession by any new authority, whatever may shape that will take. It places greater emphasis on several key areas. So factors that could influence our key risks and potentially impact our workforce or changes to service delivery. This includes, but is not limited to, local government reorganisation or significant demographic changes or pressures, all of which can affect the level of risk to the County Council. It also focuses on organisational learning from incidents and issues to reduce future risk exposure. It has clear and time-bound risk control measures and a fit-for-purpose risk appetite statements that align with the strategic direction of the organisation. And then lastly, we're also presenting to you a revised insurance strategy. So this is in response to an advisory audit in 2025, which proposed strengthening corporate level management and strategic thinking of our insurance arrangements. The strategy, which is at Appendix B, is much shorter than the previous document and seeks to provide a simpler and clearer overview of the Council's strategic framework for how insurance is managed and how that is aligned to assessed risk. It also considers, it also makes sure that we consider risk factors when taking relevant decisions and the key aims and objectives of the overall strategy. It outlines how we'll forge closer links between risk management, legal and financial colleagues, all of which have an important role to play in affecting our insurance arrangements. And to reflect this new oversight of the insurance strategy with the risk management, future reports on the insurance strategy will be reflected in all annual risk management reports to Cabinet, starting today and then from onwards. So that's my summary, so I'm happy to take questions.
Super, thanks. So, Steve.
Thanks, Leader. Thank you for the report. There's a lot of detail in there, which is much appreciated, so thank you for that. Many of our residents come from a more commercial background, so they'll be interested in how our approach to risk management compares to the commercial arena. And in particular, I noted that we've been audited and came out as reasonable. I do dislike, as with Ofsted, those one-word judgments. Could you put that into context? What does reasonable actually mean?
There's only one level above reasonable, which is substantial assurance. It's the way our internal audit partnership work. What I would point to, though, is when writing, there was only very small observations that came back from that audit, as well as the Zurich Health Check. And to quote the Zurich Health Check that came back, which came back with well managed, which is a similar level of assurance, that them to gain greater levels of assurance or to improve our risk management processes further, there may not be the resources or the appetite to do so. So basically what that told us is that we're doing very well in the risk management space. And for us to get even better, we may need to plug more resources, place a greater burden of administrative burden on our staff to record things, which we might not have the appetite to do so. So two of the observations that were made in the SIAP audit, we've actually decided not to act upon because it was decided that would be an extra administrative burden that we don't have the appetite to pursue.
Super, thanks. Any other comments, questions? Select committee chairs? No? Stuart, Steph, thanks so much. It seems quite a dry subject, again, risk sometimes when you look at it, but actually this is the kind of thing that underpins everything. It also is the piece of work that essentially decides to what extent we want to be commercial or to what extent we want to take those risks that actually can benefit us all. And the point about not perhaps following a couple of the recommendations because of the administrative burden is an important one, because administrative burden is cost, and that impacts on all of us. So the recommendations are on page 549 in paragraphs 3 to 8. Can I, Stephen?
Without going into...
I think we have to take it separately. So I think, yeah. So 549, paragraphs 3 to 8. All of those in favour of accepting those recommendations, and that's agreed. Thank you so much. Now you're going to stay there just for a minute. Do I need to read this out? All of it?
You don't have to read it out. You just asked the Cabinet whether they agreed.
Okay, super. So for those watching on webcast, we've got one more item, which, because of the detail involved in it, we need to exclude the press and public from the item because of some confidential information that is included within it. We all have the item 15, the recommendation that we do so. Cabinet, are you in support of excluding the press and public? All those in favour? Thank you. So we thank you for watching. If you have been watching, we will stop the webcast now.